Thank you all again. I'm going to pull up the slides for Gabby and Al, but I will pass off to you officially. So a big round of applause as we get started on talking about permaculture today. Welcome.
And thank you everyone for joining us. I see quite a few permaculture practitioners in the chat and who have joined us. So if this is your first time being exposed to permaculture, please feel free to put your name and email in the chat. We'd love to follow up with you again later. As well, if you have a PDC or you're an active instructor or designer in the Chicagoland area and we don't know you personally, please also put a shout out in the chat so we can be sure to invite you to our upcoming activities. Today we are hosting this session that kind of mirrors the type of visioning activities that a few of us have been going, just sort of endeavoring to explore in the past couple of years. There are, a number of people who have obtained training in permaculture, which is it's an alternative to industrial and traditional modern agriculture practices that really draws from the traditions, particularly of the global South and other parts of the world that still have active gardening and traditional farming practices. So this whole thing, permaculture, sort of started in the late 1970s and sort of separated from sort of the university-based teaching of agriculture into this novel kind of DIY, do-it-yourself way of teaching gardening that really draws from just lots of traditions. But it was originally started by two Australian gentlemen, a professor and a graduate student. This is Bill Mollison was the instructor, and we have David Holmgren is also his student and a graduate student at the time, and both of them created this initial model and book they published called Permaculture 1, and then they also began teaching permaculture. The original way it was done is that people would travel to where they were in Australia and obtain training over 2 weeks for a total of like 72 hours of learning. And this really was how Bill Mollison was able to consolidate and disseminate lots of information about traditional practices and how they're utilized in different types of ecologies and landscapes. So this was a really intensive way of teaching permaculture. And over the years, books and things that used to be sort of open source or photocopy it as you need it type of practice ended up turning into things that are a bit more commercial. So, we have a book, a permaculture textbook that's very, very expensive for people to obtain here and in the global South. As well, traveling for 2 weeks to stay at a homestay on a farm somewhere around the world is also outside of the scope of what a lot of people are able to do. The world of the internet and online learning has certainly changed things, and a lot of people have, thank you, a lot of people have started doing, even from some of the very original teachers, have started doing online permaculture courses. And this is really amazing. But one of the things that we learn in permaculture is that we also build community. And so it's really difficult either in the first model or the second model to find a group of people that you can connect with, and also how to find like-minded people who are not really interested in chemical-based or large-scale agriculture that's traditionally a single crop in a single plot of land. That model, whether it's a single raised bed in a garden or community garden, or acres and acres of fields, or hundreds of acres of fields that are farmed by an operator in a machine. That's sort of what we're looking at. Is there's sort of parallels between contemporary, even I would say some community gardens, just by the nature of how they're managed, as well as industrial agriculture, in terms of a lot of times it's a single person and a single plot and a single crop. So we still see this a lot. Um, but what we're really looking to do is to build community in Chicago, as well as to support people bridging and finding networks of like-minded people across continents, countries, regions, and bring together some of the folks that are teachers and practitioners in Chicago a little bit more consistently. So again, we're really happy to bring folks together. And one of the things we really like to do in our practice, the way our organization, which is the Permaculture Institute of Chicago, we like to bring together different generations of people, youth, elders, young people, homeowners, people who don't have any access to land on a regular basis. We like to bring folks together for workshops, for training, and we do offer the permaculture designer certification. That's right now we're really focused on community organizers and activists, and folks who are really supporting the landscape of folks in communities that have either less access to land because of the nature of apartment living. But we specifically do also support the south side of Chicago, including the South Shore and South Chicago areas. As well, we have other faculty who are working in the Roseland area, and we've great colleagues who are in McHenry County and also in Kankakee County in Pembroke Township. So, we have a lot of really wonderful projects that are happening. Some are rural and some are more urban and suburban. But what we're trying to do is also really bring together the legacy and of these two gentlemen from Australia, two Caucasian gentlemen from Australia, and the knowledge, which was often from Global South or BIPOC communities, with the multicultural landscape that we have in Chicago, that includes folks who were born and raised in Africa, people who have traveled extensively, people who have really strong ties or were born in Latin America or the Caribbean. We have a number of these populations in our immediate area that we're supporting to and engaging with and helping with their gardens, to really kind of deal with this concept of legacy and debt with permaculture, because permaculture can seem like something that's a white construct, and it certainly has some practitioners who utilize permaculture just as another toolkit in landscape design or garden design, and do that in a commercial way very well to support people who need a design made for their garden or their school, or to make a food forest or farm. But for those of us who are working in areas that have been called food desert, or places that have been experiencing food apartheid in Chicago, we are really focusing on supporting having gardens in the immediate area around where people are living. That is more reliably and consistently maintained and supported, and those types of gardens are more readily able to nourish and feed the populations that want to be working on them. So we love community gardens and shared spaces, but as much as possible, we're trying to support people having a garden within steps of their back door. So that's possible in Chicago, even in apartment dwellings, and we're trying to see how we can facilitate that happening more and more for elders and for other people who are in apartment living, and for young people and young families. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to share and have Al speak a little bit about his experience and introduce himself. Alvin Walker is another one of us who are presenting today, and we're also going to have another faculty from Permaculture Institute of Chicago talk a little bit about her perspective in her work in Maryland. And then we'll come back together and have some more dialogue. So, Alvin?
Thanks, Gabby. Thank you so much for that very wonderful introduction. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are very honored and feel very privileged to be here and be able to share the work we are collaborating to do, but also the work that we have been doing prior to this collaboration, individually and with other practitioners of similar backgrounds. So just a quick note about myself. I am a gardening steward. I like to call myself a steward simply because as a person who believes in shared means by which we do things, it's important that we look at from a standpoint of, we're sharing in the work. So if you're stewarding, what you're doing is you're inviting people to a space where you are just a person that facilitates to a particular end. So that being said, I am a steward at a garden on the corner of 76 and Saginaw. The property is owned by a local church in South Shore, Windsor Park Evangelical Lutheran Church at 2619 East 76th Street. And the church's foundation started a gardening program about 5 years ago that is a host site for the Peaceful Communities gardening opportunity for youth during the summertime. So we've been gardening on that space with youth from this program for the past going on 6 seasons, 5 years now. And we're hoping to continue that collaborative effort this summer. Prior to that, the garden started out as a place for gardening for young people in the One Summer Chicago program. And that particular effort netted us the opportunity to share with young people about growing their own food, about healthy outcomes for growing their own food, and also for inviting them to come to a space where if they didn't want to do anything that day, if they didn't want to garden that day, they could just come and share in nature and be at one with people who are doing shared work, and also people who are in nature and enjoying those aspects that we normally don't have in our modern and postmodern lifestyles. So that particular gardening programming collaboration was done through a grant proposal that was presented to the city from a Leave No Veteran Behind, and they chose the church as a host site for the One Summer Chicago programming. And that program went on from 2013 up until 2015. After that, we invited the community, the church invited the community to kind of expand the idea of having community-supported agriculture. So CSA is a thing that has been historically known to really empower and uplift communities all around the country. So we thought that that whole idea of having people within walking distance of the church property sharing in the opportunity to garden and grow what they enjoy eating and what they enjoy sharing with families and friends. So we had quite a few neighbors came through, somewhere in upwards of the 20s come through the garden since beginning in 2016. And we've managed to continue that effort ever since. So in the interim period between the two youth programming efforts, we have been able to pretty successfully establish a robust community involvement through the CSA. Also, from that effort, we've been able to have people who have donated their time, their efforts, their expertise, and that's how we were able to meet Matthew Stevens, who is our original teacher from permaculture, and he actually is being hosted at the garden in South Shore. One of his gardens, which was transplanted from the location in Kenwood, is now being hosted at the garden on 76 in Saginaw. And I promise we will have photos of these garden locations. Right now, we are in the midst of a transition, and we wanted to make sure that we have most current photos for you. We do have some other small examples from our cohort of folks that will be showing off. But at the On-Conference tomorrow, if you can join us in person, we'll be able to show you more about what we're doing. But for myself as a permaculture practitioner, the way that I do gardening from the time of my youth was inspired by the fact that I was born and up until I was in the age of 11, raised in Liberia. So my gardening experience come from visiting with grandparents on 2 farms for vacations in Liberia during the Christmas and the dry season holidays. So my experience come from a polycultural, tradition where I'm used to seeing different layers of things growing from the canopy layer with nut trees and fruit trees to the shrub layer with things like sugarcane, and to the understory layer with things like palm trees and coconut trees, to the actual crop layer with things like cassava, potato, yams, root vegetables of all kinds that is growing in the same space. Relatively speaking, you can grow big if you know how to grow in layers. So the way we are used to seeing farming methodologies, done is that we tend to look at it from the standpoint of how the, agricultural practices of our industrial age has taught us to do. And that's layers and layers of the same crop type, whether it be cotton or corn or wheat, what have you. And these, layers of same crop is propagated for, dozens of square miles in some cases, even hundreds of square miles. So that tends to lend itself to, a single point of failure type of situation. Whereas with the way that, I've experienced and tried to put into practice, you basically have a more resilient and sustainable means by which you are allowing food or anything that's edible to be grown. And the other thing that this helps out with is that, you have the opportunity for diversity and therefore an opportunity for different types of environmental aspects to be realized. Whereas if you only have one crop, you have the opportunity for more man-made types of opportunities to be present. So the more man-made types of opportunities you have present, the less and less you have the opportunity for nature itself to do its work. So that is kind of how my introduction to permaculture came out. So I was introduced to Matthew Stevens. We basically were of one, mindset as far as this type of gardening and growing practice is concerned. And he kind of convinced me that, permaculture was a very good, if not seamless, way to kind of move from how I had been doing things to how things have been done in a permaculture practice. So I was bought in from then, and kind of like what my inspiration was even before meeting Matthew was from a person who was very instrumental in doing this type of gardening in Japan by the name of Masanobu Fukuoka. So he's a person that I kind of, decided that, it was a good way for us to prevent means by which crops fail, and also means by which we can build more resiliency in our growing practices when it comes to food and different types of ways of being natural in what we eat. So for my particular, inspiration, I look to him. I look to his book called The One Straw Revolution. If you have not heard about that book, please put it on your list of readings, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of inspiration from it. So just a quick story about him was that he was not at all involved with agriculture. He was from a different discipline, and while he was working, he fell sick, and he was terminally ill, and he was inspired to just start changing the way he ate, and therefore changing the way that he bought and consumed food. And this led him to start to study and change from his traditional and his original path of career. So he decided that, hey, let me go ahead and see what I can do to impact what it is that I need to see changed. And so he basically shifted his entire career path to farming and sustainable means by which we consume and grow foods that we eat. So that was my personal inspiration as far as a professional person. But personally, my inspiration comes from my grandparents. So when I went on these farming visits, I was basically at my grandfather's and grandmother's knee, learning a lot of what I am continuing to learn and put into practice. But I am very thankful for the opportunity to continue to grow in this space and to have people who are of the same mindset and are willing to use their experience, the knowledge that they continue to gain, to share with those that don't have this in their particular life routine, life practice, and just to help uplift our communities that would otherwise not have this opportunity. And I thank you all for joining us, and we hope to continue what we're doing, what we're sharing with you, even long after this particular session is over with. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Al. And thanks for folks who are, please feel free to, if you have knowledge and things, thanks so much for folks putting stuff in the chat. We appreciate it. Um, One of the things that we like to do when we host meetings and have sessions, and we're also building out um, more and more, is a hard copy library. And that's something that's been modeled by our instructor, Matthew Stevens. So when you come to our table tomorrow, you'll be able to look at what's called the Bible in Permaculture. It's the Permaculture Designer's Manual. So for people who follow more strictly Bill Mollison's teachings and Jeff Lawton, you'll see that they really draw more and more from that book. But we'll also share with you David Holmgren's text as well that he published. So one of the things that, again, we really hope to see you guys tomorrow and have you drop by, and we'll have, I put in the chat that we'll have a slideshow of some of our garden projects. And we don't just do gardens, as Al was talking about. We're looking at cultivating a multi-story food forests. And we're doing this to replicate nature, but we're also following in traditions of our ancestors, as Al talked about with his grandparents, where he learned. So many of the people in our cohort have had experience with grandparents or elders, or have been, or have sought out to be adopted by folks to teach practices. Some of my learning as well came from, actually originally from a journey to try to solve problems, health problems. And I think a lot of people are coming to these gardening and healthy food traditions and learning how to cook or preserve and grow foods themselves from scratch as a, not just a practice of what we might call food sovereignty, but also for our own well-being. And for myself, my journey started over 10 years ago when I had family members in my immediate household and immediate extended family who had really chronic health conditions and other issues with emotional dysregulation, and just lots of, sudden onset food allergies. There's a lot of really strange things that have been happening to people. And when we look back to, like, some of my relatives, I've been looking at yearbooks and studying the history of the Great Migration to Chicago. And really in early decades of our massive migration from the South to northern and western cities, we still had lots of gardening practices. People practiced what we call parkway gardening. And that's how that particular housing area got its name, from the common practice of gardening between your sidewalk and the street. And this is a really strong tradition in Chicago before and sort of up to about the 1950s. Sort of after we transitioned heavily into high-rise housing, that became less and less used. So part of my journey has been to address my family's health issues and learning to cook from scratch, getting a culinary degree, and then getting my permaculture certification was all a part of that journey to get closer to organic and restorative gardening and farming practices. And that's really been helpful to me, but I found that it's really counterculture to the general practices of the supply chain that we live in our modern industrial society. So again, my initial beginnings, I didn't learn how to garden or cook or anything from relatives because my immediate family was immersed in sort of industrial processed food. So when you get sort of so many decades into that, there's, some people end up having chronic health conditions. So one of the things that we're finding is a lot of people are feeling healing and peace and restoration, not just from the practice of gardening and permaculture, but also from reestablishing multi-generational community networks, and some people call them pods, but really developing like a sort of a system of people that you cook together, garden with, share tools with. Your kids know each other. Like, this is a kind of living that was so common before the middle of the 20th century that we just don't see today. So that's a part of the thing that we're working with, is to reestablish things where not only do I know you as a gardener, but my kids garden with your kids. We visit each other's gardens. We help each other establish beds. We help our students, so we're cross-pollinating with the practitioners who are in, like I said, McHenry County, We have Anna Maria Leone, and one of her students is in our group here visiting today in this session. We also have folks who are trained through Black Oaks, and then also some of the members who are trained from the Black Oaks Lifeboat Series permaculture certification that became a Permaculture Guild in Chicago. So there's quite a lot of folks who've learned locally and have a real strong sensitivity to places that have very limited access to fresh food. And many of these folks are intervening to either establish farms or gardens or multiple demonstration gardens, which is really common. So Matthew Stevens has set up a number of different demonstration gardens. Some of the things that Al's talking about, and the fact that one of Matthew Stevens' gardens was transplanted to one of Al's spaces that he stewards. That's one of the things that we're doing to sort of take that kind of our own different view of permaculture away from money and paying people to design and things like that, and just focusing in on building community, activating spaces, and then also moving forward this community building aspect. So we have a cohort that's been established since last summer. Each summer, we're looking forward to continuing a practice of having what's called a permaculture convergence. We had one in 2019 that Pancho McFarland, one of the original founders who's in our group today of the Permaculture Institute of Chicago, and he and Matthew Stevens chaired the convergence, which is more than a conference. It's a bringing together of practitioners and people interested in just sort of more than organic, really restorative and nourishing gardening practices, but also this idea of creating community and bringing people together. So we find that a lot of people are doing this. The Good Food Fest was one of these places where a lot of permaculture people used to do demonstrations and trainings and share knowledge. But this also is a place for those of you who are practitioners. We look forward to having you do a presentation this July and share some of your knowledge, and we can hopefully visit each other's farms and gardens this year. But that's something that we look forward to seeing you at in July. And then we tend to offer what's called a hybrid online and in-person local permaculture design certification that lasts for somewhere between either a 6-month session or a year-long session. So these are at least 1.5 hour a week Zoom, and then complemented by in-person activities at different garden sites around the city, or we also activate spaces and support other spaces that are doing other really good community building things. So we'll attend BIPOC related talks, presentations, and we will volunteer and do land restoration, particularly at Rainbow Beach. We've done some work. So we really like to get together, learn about the landscape, learn about native plants so that we can support our local pollinators, and also continue to share plants and garden together and seeds and bulbs and whatever we can with those around in our community. Like we've shared a lot of bulbs that Anna Maria Leone received and lots of knowledge from other folks. So let me see if I don't know if Joanna has joined us yet. I think we're still waiting for Joanna to share with us some of her experience being an instructor and also learning from the Permaculture Institute of Chicago. When she joins the call, I think that'll be something that we can do next, but otherwise we can go to the next slide and see if we've already covered those topics. So what we want to really look at today and hear from some folks who are practitioners and instructors and people interested in learning more about permaculture is, should we get rid of this name permaculture? What do we need? And do we have a need for a separate type of name rather than permaculture? Because right now we have, Chicago is often called, right, a city and a garden. And yet we really don't see, we're seeing that less and less in how people are designing spaces and designing residential spaces. So right now people are building, if you've noticed a lot in Chicago, 3 or 4 story buildings, condo type of buildings that don't even include any green space at all. They go right up to the sidewalk and they include a drive-in garage in the back, and it's just stacked housing. So this is the kind of new model of housing in the city. And the city, we also know, is not very conducive to supporting larger gatherings of, in residential spaces. So we're seeing more studios, kitchenettes, and in one bedrooms, and less spaces that are 2-bedroom or larger for working class people or just regular people. So sadly, we are seeing empty spaces where buildings are torn down in a lot of our neighborhoods. And yet what's going up is not necessarily even leaving room for gardening. So again, we'd love to hear if folks are interested in jumping in and talking. I know Pancho McFarland is in the chat. Steve Archer is here. I've seen them here. We also have some students. Alexi Irving, I see Sophia Rashid is here, who also was at the previous convergence. Do you all think we need to change? Are we more than permaculture practitioners, or are we, which you would say, more like the goat? Are we more like the originals? Since a lot of us are coming from maybe global South traditions or origins in gardening, we just feel like, we can go to the next slide. We're feeling a lot of folks are turned off by the term permaculture. But now we have really great initiatives like Wonderland is a space in McHenry County that's an eco village that's being established with multiple families in a multi-acreage space. So a lot of you might have seen working groups and announcements for that. We'll share some information there. But also Ruta Sur is another space that's activating sort of a guerrilla activation of land for gardening, for food, and for community building. We can go to the next slide. That's one of our current permaculture designers, Emily, who might want to give a shout out here. But so we have two folks on the left affiliated with Wonderland Space. We have Lexi Irving, Al Walker, and then myself. I'm hosting this first cohort. And so these are the folks who are going to be finishing their certification in the next month or two, probably, and have their designs be activated more and more this summer. We can go to the next slide. And then this is some of the green lots, and Pancho McFarland and some of his students, including Alexi Irving, is in this shot. And this is, I believe this is the garden around 103rd and Wabash. We can go to the next slide. So this is another food forest space. So, again, we're so excited. We have almost 50 people on this Zoom. So we know there's interest in permaculture. We'd love for folks to either put in the chat, should we scrap the name? Should we rename ourselves? Is urban permaculture something different? Is BIPOC urban permaculture even more different? Great. Yeah, guerrilla gardening is something that people are practicing.
Hey, Gabby.
Yeah, non-BIPOC people, there's certainly a question here. Sorry, I just want to address in the chat that non-BIPOC folks are absolutely welcome to join any of our activities, 100%. Go ahead, Pancho, welcome.
Yeah, well, you mentioned me a couple of times. Hi, everybody. But I feel strongly about this, so I want to jump in. I think you wanted to have a conversation, so I'll kick it off. I've come to the conclusion that permaculture is a tool, and my students have helped me see this. My permaculture students have helped me see this a lot, but the permaculture is a tool, and it's a discipline that we can use just like any other discipline. Like, I'm a sociology professor, just like sociology or anthropology or others, and we should critique it just like we do from a Black and Indigenous perspective, from a radical African and Indigenous perspective. And we can say, well, this is what permaculture is. It's useful. We can use it, but we need more than that. And I don't know what everybody's goals are here, but my goals are liberation for our people. So I think we can use that tool, but we need more than that. We need more than permaculture, but it's valuable. So I can appreciate their systematizing of all these great Indigenous knowledges, and offering to us this scientific approach to it. And I'm fine to use that as a tool, but we need more for the purposes of what I think we need: liberation, decolonization, and such. You know, so I wanted to add that because it is something I think about all the time. Appreciate you. I'll be quiet.
Actually, please stay on because we'd
Yeah,
love to hear.
yeah, I was
Um,
gonna say, don't be quiet.
don't be quiet. Yeah. We'd love to hear a little bit more of your. I've heard you speak a little bit about. We'd like to design in zones. So in permaculture, folks design in, typically we talk about zone 0, zone 1, 2, and 3. So you might have your pasture lands are going to be much further out. Maybe some of your animals that are pasturing are going to be further out, and your herb gardens right next to your house, you know, things like this. But I've heard you talk about zoning like zone 0 and even 00. So I'm wondering, what's your thoughts on how to design a lifestyle or your interior, maybe your interior home or your interior personal like person? What do you think about of that? Because that's, I think, not something that people think about that much. They mostly think about the land and garden.
Well, this, you know, the emphasis on the 0 and 00 zones, and this again referring to the zoning system, zoning method of permaculture. That emphasis I learned from Baba Fred and Dr. Jafunza, right, at the Black Oak Center in our lifeboats class that you mentioned. So Baba Fred will, to this day, will continue to, and probably all the, will continue to talk about this big zone 00, the inner zone, the inner landscape, he says sometimes. And I've learned a great deal about that. And I think, again, from my students and from other people who've been in my circles, I've been so fortunate to have, who have emphasized this, which is de-emphasized in Mollison's permaculture and in the permaculture in general, which is aspects of the spirit, mental and emotional ordering and tools to use to help us. Because the idea is if the designer inside is having problems, again, this is Baba Fred, this is from him, if he's having, they are having problems inside, it's going to come out in their design. They're not going to be able to design to the full capacity. They're not going to be able to impact their environment in the most the best way they possibly could. So I've been looking a lot at spirit. Again, this is what I've been learning a lot from mostly people younger than me, actually, who've been in my circles. So I think we look at the spirit. I think we look at our ancestors. We are African people. We're indigenous people. We stand on that. We figure out what that means. And this is, so anyway, that's where I would go with that. And I'm talking about Baba Fred Carter of the Black Oak Center for Sustainable Renewable Living. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Pancho. I just wanted to chime in real quickly, particularly about the inner self aspect of what we are discussing right now. And it's really important to recognize that connectivity with nature and the inner self. So we don't really put those two things into a linked relationship when we speak of, you know, taking care of ourselves internally. And I think just being in nature, just being in the outdoors, or just having nature around you, you can bring the outdoors into your home. You can hang a bunch of plants up. You can put like a window where you have a big window ledge. You can set up some herbs. All of these types of feedback that we're getting from nature, whether it be the aromatics, or whether it be the visual or the oral, all of these things help us, you know, center ourselves internally. So working from the inside out is still completely and, completely and unrestrictedly attached to nature, to being in the open, to being in the wild. But at the same time, you can bring that inside. You can bring that into your home. You can invite nature into your home. A lot of people say they have a black thumb, so they can't go outside and grow stuff because everything they grow dies. I'm like, okay, that's fine. We can come over and build you a window ledge, and we can put pots. We can make your window ledge larger. You can put pots in there and you can grow herbs. Herbs are about the, the most forgiving things to grow, or you can grow things that are, less intensive for maintenance. You can get you some succulents, and succulents don't need but maybe a spit of water every month, so you can grow something. It's basically what I'm trying to say. And all of that helps you, you looking at something growing, you looking at something being nurtured, or you helping to nurture that thing actually helps you spiritually, helps you internally to, have a sense of well-being. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. I know that Jojo has, Joanna La Follette has just joined the call, and we would love, Jojo, we just have been and heard a little bit from Pancho, one of your teachers as well.
Right.
Pancho McFarland just spoke about designing for the inner landscape, and we were really talking about, how to build on the legacy from Bill Mollison. And I know you've had some things you want to share with us too.
Well, I wanted to add to that because about what Al was saying, we're constantly bombarded with pollutants. So when we're talking about bringing nature in, for instance, one of the things that is low maintenance are spider plants. And spider plants is one of those beneficial plants that we can bring into our home environment and help, clean out the air, for example. Also, in permaculture we call it an ethical conscious design. And in that design, I'll just briefly tell you this, that when we're talking about the home, it's also called Zone Zero. So what we want to do is we start from our homes and then we work our way out. So the things that we're talking about, like bringing those things in into our environment, we want to create a sustainable, as much as we can, a sustainable environment. So, and we want to also create an environment where we have, a cleaner environment. So, for instance, I was just watching a video about this, but fragrances, for example, and these are all things that we can connect with, offer our expertise, offer things that, building upon our community to support each other in order to create a more sustainable environment, even if it's just our homes, because some of us only have, say, an apartment. So it's like, what can you do in that apartment, And growing herbs is relatively easy. Having some of these plants, like a spider plant, is another thing that can be done. And then leading back to what I was going to say was fragrances is something that's not regulated by the FDA. They have managed to skirt their way around it. So whenever you see the word fragrance on a product, that could mean anything. It could mean any type of volatile chemical that's added to whatever, your shampoo, your soap, whatever that is. So these are all things that, as far as in the permaculture community, we want to try to eliminate those uses. So some of the influences or part of the community that, that we have is also looking back or being part of the indigenous community and working with those examples that we have and that we know of before, Westerners and colonizers came to the country and, as we know, pushed out the indigenous people, but they have a lot to still offer us in return. So we can just incorporate that also into our permaculture design. So anyway, that's why I just wanted to add.
Thank you so much, JoJo. And Joanna is a practitioner in Maryland. So what area are you practicing in, JoJo?
I'm about maybe 40 minutes out from both DC and Baltimore.
Okay, great.
Specifically Frederick, Maryland, if anybody's familiar with that area.
Thanks, JoJo. I know I don't
And
know if I'm
thanks
going
for
to say this
having
name
me.
right. Thank you, JoJo. Yeah, we're really glad to have you, and we'll ask you another question in a minute. I know there's someone named Peren who's on the call that wants to share something.
Okay. Piscataway people are what was the area that was inhabited here before they were pushed out.
Thanks, JoJo. Is Peren able to come off mute? Are we able to have other folks? Oh, great. So please go ahead and put any comments in the chat. Sorry, their mic is acting up. So great.
We also, Gabby, we also had a question from AZ Wang a while ago. I hope you're still on. The question was, what is your relationship to the term agroecology? I don't know if we have that term in our vocabulary. I know it sounds to me like it is a academic practice, I suppose, but I'm not familiar with it at all. I just wanted to raise that up for anybody that might know more about it and can explain it.
Great. Yeah, I don't personally deploy that, so anyone can share about that.
Poncho probably has some background. Sorry to put you on the spot, Poncho.
I don't know that agroecology is a well-defined discipline at this point, as far as I understand. I think it covers a lot of the types of practices that permaculturalists, but many other land practices would incorporate, right? Agriculture with a heavy emphasis on ecology, on the human, whether it's gardener, farmer, ecological practitioner, engaging in ecological services, being mindful of ecology as opposed to the industrial model. And I think that permaculture would fit into that, but permaculture, part of what Mollison wanted to do was make sure we understood this is a design science system. And these are the principles and the methodologies based on the data, the best data that we have about things that can be used in any situation. So I think there's a lot of relationships. But I would say that, permaculture is a well-defined methodology. Agroecology is a broad set of practices and theories about things. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that agroecology, it seems like it's a little bit more of the type of term that's associated with sustainability and maybe with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and sort of some of these concepts they hitch together a lot of things like equity and justice and sort of things like that, and agency in populations. But yeah, again, I'm not quite sure if it's sort of again, we have to watch out. Are some things sort of a greenwashing? Is it things that are, again, like demonstration projects of agriculture where they're shifting slightly to incorporate things like permaculture within it? So, again, when we look at things like permaculture asks us to divest from centralized systems. And so as much as possible, Matthew Stevens and some of us have been trying to get as much as we can off of some of the centralized systems like Facebook or some of these other things. And that's why Mollison left the university system and took his work to the people. So I think, again, we just have to be really cognizant of, what people are doing and what's the fruit. Does their work and their intervention bear fruit? And is that fruit sweet? Is it good? Is it consistent? Or are there issues underlying it where there might be some of the larger players in the global supply chain that are still influencing some of these things? So, I mean, if people are agroecology practitioners and they're pretty much congruent with permaculture, I say that's fine. We're supporting hyper local food systems and food forestry in a way that people have edible plants and food and trees in their area, and also cultivate other plants that will support the wildlife in the landscape, like our you know like our pollinators, right? That's the number one thing that we're looking to support. So as much as possible, we want to do native flowers so that we can support our native plants and our native soils, and also our soil health. And so we really do appreciate Dr. Israel. I think he's presenting this over these sessions, but there's a biodynamic practitioner within the permaculture community that's really excellent. So we draw from Dr. Israel whenever we can. He's based in North Lawndale. So I think, yeah, so sorry, I'm going to slow down a little bit for the interpreters. So I just want to read one of the comments. There's one in the chat from Paren for anybody who's joining just by audio. This is a member of the Chicago Permaculture Association and wanted to add their 2 cents. So let me just make sure we get that comment in here, which is just jumped ahead. Here we go. And then, so yeah, terms like permaculture and connect the ancestral knowledge. I think, yeah, that's something that we're really looking to, our means to possibilities. So we grow, we work, earthwork and multi-pronged work, building community, while gardening and farming. So yeah, I think we really have a lot of folks in the chat who are putting some great things here. Hear more. We stretch ourselves into our spaces where our people are. We take land back. Just not asking, right? So that's guerrilla gardening. So it looks like one of our members and the Ruta Sur space is probably going to be activating some activities, hopefully tomorrow, some hands-on activities in the space. So we also have been working on some designs, some visuals for folks. So you can come, and we have coloring pages that really illustrate sort of what we believe in and what we believe in terms of what polyculture looks like in a permaculture space. So polyculture, that's really planting lots of different plants at different layers that complement each other and having these over time, so that we have some plants that we're harvesting, and then we're having other plants that are coming to ripening. So these are all things that we really, really want. Good. And I know that Sophia's in the house, so I want to see if her audio is working, if she wants to activate and speak, because she's been at our convergence before.
Hi. I'm not gonna come on camera though. Oh no, I didn't actually have a question. I was fooling around, so maybe I must have pushed something. But I'm loving it, and I'm trying to get back in there and get activated. So I'm looking forward to, seeing what's gonna happen this year. I'm not gonna be able to do too much physically because I injured my shoulders, but hopefully I can bring some laughs or talk or something. But
Yeah, I
thank you
think
guys.
thank you so
Sophia.
much. Yeah, and please, if anybody is in a situation where you want to garden, you want to activate a space, but something is coming up, you've got, we've got some colleagues that are doing some really great projects. I know Englewood and up on the north side there have been some projects where young people have been paired to activate garden spaces, perhaps in some elders' yards where they want to have garden, they want to have food, and young people don't have spaces to garden because they're in apartments and other spaces. So these are some things that we can help connect folks to. We can also, we're working on some projects if folks want to jump on to, I know we're getting close to the end, but we have some window and fire escape and porch gardening projects that have been a long-term design that I've been working on that we now have some resources to activate, some bag gardening. And grow bags, these type of things. There have been some really great initiatives like Orrin Williams has been doing some great grow bag activities, and we want to kind of continue and extend that some more. So Sophia, just let us know, and we're happy to bring our, our hands and our trowels and our knee pads to your space to activate whatever garden things you want. So yeah, and I think someone is talking about successive gardening, and I think, we definitely love that. One of the things that I've been really studying is sort of provision grounds and ground provisions in the Caribbean way. This is also super common to have different root vegetables growing. So we may have our potatoes planted under, our sweet potatoes planted underneath where we have herbs or peppers or different things, so that we can be harvesting our peppers. And as we're watering our peppers, we're also going to be having in the future a harvest of other root vegetables like carrots or other things. So we really love bringing lots of things together. So yeah, I think I would sure hope that folks can catch up with us. The best way to reach us is going to be right now, the Permaculture Institute of Chicago Facebook page is probably our easiest reach, or the Chicago Permaculture Association Facebook page. So we are going to be, again, having some activities coming up. So we'll have some flyers tomorrow that have some of our upcoming dates. And we also are going to be sharing dates of work days at Wonderland, which is a space where we might be able to camp and do larger scale earthworks that we can't normally do in the city. But please, look forward to checking out our Facebook page. We'll keep that active, and we're if people want to make donations or join the association, you might get a t-shirt. If you want to join or make a donation to the association, we'll have a few t-shirts available tomorrow that have some of our land back donated logo by one of our permaculture design certification students. Partner is going to be, that design has been incorporated into our shirts for this year. And we also have a really beautiful permaculture illustration. Again, that illustration on our shirts is going to be the same one. That's a coloring page that you can take, give to some kids, let them start opening their minds. And if you want to, you can meditate and color in some of our beautiful coloring pages. And I'm not sure if we can share one of these right now, but I'll try to put it on my screen so you can see that we are having all kinds of beautiful, lovely plants and animals together in a polyculture way. So this is going to be a coloring sheet you can pick up for free if you want a higher end one that you can watercolor yourself. We'll have some of those available for purchase or for donations. And then, yeah, we really look forward to connecting up to our network of folks. And then, yeah, we love to meet you tomorrow and do some little DIY things at our table with you, share with you some of our library of books so you can see them. If people are interested in purchasing a permaculture designer's manual, we've talked to the publisher and gotten a discount for anyone in the Chicago area. Can use our special code we got from them to get a discounted price. But please feel free to stop by and see some of our books, talk with us, do some DIY things with us tomorrow, and then sign up so we can, if you want to be a part of our meetups, we'll do some garden cleanups for elders and do some plantings and help activate your own space. If you have a space you want to activate, then that could be our next meetup location, is to help you get your space activated. So we're a little bit more DIY, and we don't charge for folks that are in the activist community and like to activate spaces. So this particular cohort we call it an earth work study. So normally you might pay anything from $1,500, maybe $800 to $1,500 to over $2,000 to do a permaculture designer certification. So that's not us. We activate and support people who want to learn and get their certification. And then that's our concept. So we make each other better, we care for people in creation, and then we embody earthwork and study. So please, if you want to be a part of our pod and our network and start to cook and garden and preserve foods together, please visit with us, sign up for our mailing list, sign up on our Facebook page, send us a message, follow us. We love having so many folks here today, super exciting, and we look forward to meeting you tomorrow in person, hopefully, or soon. I think we're going to have a poll that they're going to ask folks to do. So
Yeah,
that
I was
poll,
just going
thank
to launch
you.
that.
Thank you.
Wow,
Thank you so
big
much.
round of applause for our wonderful speakers and all of you. There's so much knowledge in this space, and I just what a gift to be in it and to learn from y'all. I know I'm very activated to get my porch garden going. But yes, we're going to launch a poll. You will see a push